The bridge of the Earth battleship Indomitable hummed with quiet energy. Captain Lee Dongwu stood at the center, his hands clasped behind his back as he stared at the massive screen before him. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. The blaze stretched across space like a wall of living fire. Orange and gold flames danced in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The energy barrier surrounded the planet Paraxis completely, extending far beyond what their sensors could measure. No ship had ever passed through it. No living being had ever seen what lay beyond. "Captain," Sergeant Kim Nari called from her station. "We're receiving a transmission. It's coming from inside the blaze." Dongwu turned toward her. Nari was one of his best soldiers, tough and smart. If she looked worried, there was good reason. "Put it through." The air above the bridge shimmered and a figure appeared. It was tall, much taller than any human. 4 arms extended from its torso, each ending in hands that held too many fingers. Its skin looked like living crystal, reflecting the bridge lights in rainbow patterns. 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows focused on the humans below. "I am High Regent Vorthak of the Eternal Council," the being said. Its voice filled the bridge like rolling thunder. "You are the creatures from the 3rd planet of the Yellow Star." "We are humans from Earth," Dongwu replied, stepping forward. "I am Captain Lee Dongwu." Vorthak's 6 eyes blinked slowly. "Your species is young. Your star system has been catalogued, but you were deemed too primitive for contact. Yet here you are, flying between stars. Interesting." Private Park Jiho looked up from his communication console. He was barely 20 years old, but his fingers moved across the controls like he was born to it. "Sir, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from their ship. Power levels are off our charts." Vorthak seemed to hear this despite the private channel. "Your instruments cannot measure our capabilities, young ones. We have existed since before your world cooled from its birth fires. We have watched civilizations rise and fall like seasons. We are eternal." Dr. Choi Soonja approached from the science station. She carried a data tablet that showed readings from their first encounters with alien technology. "Captain, based on what we've learned from other species, the Council has ruled this galaxy for over 50,000 years. They're considered living legends." "Legends," Vorthak repeated, and something like amusement colored his voice. "Yes, that is what the younger species call us. We prefer the term reality." The alien being's 4 arms spread wide in a gesture that could only mean absolute authority. "You will submit to our rule, creatures of Earth. Your species lacks the wisdom to govern itself. This is not a request. This is the natural order." Silence fell across the bridge. Every human present understood what they were hearing. This ancient being, this legend made flesh, was demanding their complete surrender. Earth would become just another world under alien rule. Dongwu felt the weight of his species' future on his shoulders. Behind him, his crew waited for his response. On Earth, billions of people lived their lives unaware that their freedom hung in the balance of this moment. "With respect, High Regent," Dongwu said carefully, "we must decline your offer." The sound that came from Vorthak was like cosmic thunder mixed with breaking glass. The alien's crystalline skin flared with internal light. All 6 eyes widened in what could only be shock. "Decline?" Vorthak's voice rose in pitch. "No species has ever declined our rule. We are the Eternal Council. We have commanded the loyalty of 1,000 worlds. We are beyond challenge." "Maybe that's the problem," Dongwu replied quietly. Nari stepped closer to her captain. She had fought in Earth's colonial wars and faced impossible odds before. But this was different. This was facing down beings who were considered gods by most of the galaxy. "You do not understand," Vorthak continued, his 4 arms gesturing frantically. "We are not like the other species you may have encountered. We do not negotiate. We do not compromise. We rule because we are superior in every way that matters." "Superior in what way?" Dr. Soonja asked, her scientific curiosity overriding caution. "Technology? Age, power? All of these and more," Vorthak replied. "We have transcended the limitations of mortal existence. We command energies that can reshape worlds. We have knowledge accumulated over millennia. What could your young species possibly offer that we do not already possess?" Dongwu looked around his bridge. He saw Nari checking her weapon systems despite knowing they were probably useless against the Council's technology. He saw Jiho frantically analyzing the alien transmission for any useful data. He saw Soonja taking notes on everything she observed about their first alien contact. He saw humans being human, curious, defiant, and absolutely refusing to give up without a fight. "You want to know what we offer?" Dongwu asked. We offer something you've apparently forgotten after 50,000 years of unchallenged rule. We offer the word no. Vorthak's form seemed to shimmer with rage. Your ignorance is astounding. Do you know what lies within the blaze? Do you comprehend the power that protects our world? We know it's a barrier, Jiho said from his station. We know it's made of some kind of exotic energy we don't understand yet. And we know no one has ever gotten through it. Yet, Nari added with a grim smile. The blaze is not merely a barrier, Vorthak said. It is proof of our transcendence. It is the manifestation of power beyond your comprehension. It has protected Paraxis for longer than your species has existed. Nothing living has ever breached it. Well, Dongwu said, there's a first time for everything. The silence that followed was deafening. Vorthak stared at the human captain as if he had just claimed he could fly by flapping his arms. The very concept seemed to break something in the alien's mind. You cannot be serious, Vorthak finally said. You are threatening to assault the homeworld of the Eternal Council. You, a species that achieved interstellar flight mere months ago, believe you can succeed where 50,000 years of galactic civilization has failed? I believe, Dongwu said slowly, that legends are just bullies who haven't been punched in the face yet. Vorthak's crystalline skin flared with brilliant light. Your species has 72 hours to reconsider this foolishness. Submit to our rule or face extinction. We have destroyed civilizations for lesser insults than this. And that, Dongwu replied, is exactly why someone needs to stop you. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence. For a moment, nobody spoke. They had just declared war on beings who were worshipped as gods across the galaxy. Well, Nari said finally, that went about as well as expected. Jiho laughed nervously. Captain, are we really going to try to fight them? Our entire fleet wouldn't last 5 minutes against that level of technology. Maybe not in a straight fight, Dongwu admitted. But who said anything about fighting fair? Sunja looked up from her tablet. Captain, I've been analyzing the energy readings from their transmission. The Council's technology is incredibly advanced, but it follows patterns, rules. They've had 50,000 years to perfect their methods, which means 50,000 years to become predictable. Predictable how? They think in terms of absolute superiority, she explained. They've never had to adapt, never had to improvise. They've always won through overwhelming force and intimidation. Dongwu nodded slowly. They've never faced an enemy crazy enough to charge directly at their strongest point. Sir, Jiho said, are we really crazy enough to charge at the blaze? The captain looked at his crew, then at the swirling wall of energy that filled their view screen. Somewhere beyond that barrier was a world that had never been touched by war, ruled by beings who had never known defeat. Jiho, he said quietly, we're humans. Crazy is what we do best. Outside the ship, the blaze continued its eternal dance, beautiful and terrible and supposedly impenetrable. But for the first time in 50,000 years, someone was looking at it not with fear or worship, but with the calculating gaze of a predator sizing up its prey. The legends were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one too ignorant to know when they're beaten. The secure communication channel crackled to life in Captain Lee Dongwu's private quarters. Admiral Yoon Taemin's weathered face appeared on the small screen, his expression grave. Behind him, the blue curve of Earth rotated slowly in space, peaceful and unaware of the cosmic storm brewing light years away. Captain Lee, Admiral Yoon began without greeting. I've read your report 3 times. Command thinks you've lost your mind. Dongwu sat straighter in his chair. Sir, with respect, our situation doesn't leave room for sanity. The Council has made their position clear. Submit or die. Those are our only options according to them. And you believe declaring war on gods is a better choice? They're not gods, Admiral. They're bullies with good technology and a 50,000-year winning streak. Every bully falls eventually. Admiral Yoon rubbed his temples. Captain, these beings have wiped out entire civilizations for less than what you said to them. They command power we can't even measure properly, which is exactly why no one has ever beaten them, Dongwu replied. Everyone who faces the Council is already defeated in their minds before the fight starts. They see the legends and give up. The Admiral leaned forward. And you don't see legends? I see an old empire that's never been tested. I see rulers who've forgotten what real competition feels like. I see a target. A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Admiral Yoon sighed. What exactly are you proposing, Captain? A direct assault on Pyraxis. 3 ships, volunteer crews only. We breach the blaze and hit them where they've never been hit before. Their home. The blaze has never been penetrated, not once in recorded galactic history. That's because no one's tried hard enough, Dongwu said. Everyone who approaches it does so with fear and reverence. We approach it like what it is, an obstacle to remove. Admiral Yoon was quiet for several minutes, studying reports on his own screen. Captain, even if you somehow got through the blaze, what then? Their planetary defenses alone could destroy our entire fleet. Not if we're fast enough, smart enough, and crazy enough, Dongwu replied. Sir, humanity didn't reach the stars by playing it safe. We did it by attempting the impossible until it became possible. The risk to Earth if you fail is the same as if we do nothing. The Council doesn't negotiate. They don't show mercy. If we submit, we become slaves. If we refuse and do nothing, they'll destroy us anyway. At least this way, we go down fighting. Admiral Yoon looked directly into the camera. And if you succeed? Then we show the galaxy that legends can bleed. We show every oppressed species that the Council can be beaten. We change everything. Another long pause. Then Admiral Yoon nodded slowly. You have 48 hours until their deadline. What do you need? 3 volunteer crews, the fastest ships we have, and permission to modify them for an environment no human technology was designed to handle. Done. God help us all. The transmission ended, leaving Dongwu alone with his thoughts. Through his quarter's small porthole, he could see the blaze in the distance, a wall of fire that had protected the Council's world since before humans discovered agriculture. A soft chime indicated someone at his door. Enter. Sergeant Kim Nari stepped inside, her expression serious. Captain, I've been running calculations on the blaze. The energy output is incredible, but it's not random. There are patterns. What kind of patterns? Nari pulled out a data tablet and showed him a series of energy readings. It pulses, very slightly but regularly. Every few hours, the intensity drops by approximately 3% in specific sectors. Enough to get through? Maybe. If we time it perfectly and our modifications work. Big ifs, sir. Dongwu studied the data. How did you spot this? Our best scientists missed it. Because our best scientists were looking at it like a natural phenomenon. I looked at it like a weapons system. Weapons have patterns. They have weaknesses. Private Park Jiho knocked and entered without waiting for permission. His young face was flushed with excitement. Captain, I've been monitoring galactic communications. Word is spreading about what happened between us and the Council. What kind of word? The official channels are calling us insane. But the underground networks, the resistance groups on occupied worlds, they're calling us something else. Which is? Hope, sir. For the first time in centuries, someone stood up to the Council and lived to tell about it. They're watching to see what we do next. Dr. Choi Soonja arrived moments later, carrying an armload of data tablets and looking like she hadn't slept in days. Captain, I've been analyzing everything we know about Council technology and psychology. I think I understand why they've never been defeated. Tell me. Soonja set down her tablets and activated a holographic display. They operate from a position of absolute psychological superiority. They don't just defeat enemies. They crush their will to fight before the battle starts. But that approach has made them predictable. How so? They've never had to adapt, never had to change tactics. They use the same overwhelming force strategy they've used for millennia because it's always worked. Dongwu began to see where she was going. But if they face an enemy that doesn't break? Exactly. An enemy that keeps fighting despite being outgunned. An enemy that doesn't follow conventional tactics. An enemy that treats them like just another opponent instead of gods. They won't know how to respond, Nari grinned. You're saying their biggest strength is also their biggest weakness. Precisely. They've won so many times and for so long that they've forgotten how to handle a real fight. Jiho pulled up another display. I've been monitoring their communication since our encounter. There's confusion in their ranks. Some of them don't believe we're serious about attacking them. Good, Dongwu said. Confusion is our friend. The next 36 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Engineers worked around the clock to modify 3 corvettes for passage through the blaze. They installed experimental heat shielding, reinforced hull plating, and completely rebuilt the power systems. The Defiants, Courage and Resolve had been fast attack vessels. Now they were something entirely new. Ships designed for the impossible mission of breaching the galaxy's most feared barrier. Volunteers lined up faster than they could be processed. Word had spread through the human fleet about the mission, and despite its obvious suicide nature, over 1,000 crew members requested assignment. Why? Dongwu asked one volunteer, a young pilot named Lee Minho. Because someone has to do it, sir. And if not us, then who? It was the same answer from everyone. Mechanics, gunners, navigators, marines. They all understood the odds. They all volunteered anyway. Dr. Sunja presented her final analysis to the assault team leaders. Based on council behavior patterns, they'll expect us to attack their outer defenses first. Standard military doctrine. They'll position their strongest forces there. So we do the opposite, Nari said. Exactly. We ignore their outer defenses completely. We punch straight through the blaze and hit their homeworld directly. They won't be ready for that level of audacity. Jiho had spent the time hacking every piece of council technology they'd encountered. I've found something interesting in their communication protocols. They have built-in delays for long-range transmission. If we move fast enough, we can hit them before they can coordinate a proper response. The final briefing took place in the Indomitable's main conference room. The 3 assault teams sat around a holographic display of Paraxis and the surrounding space. Understand this, Dongwu told them. We're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for every species that's ever been told they're not good enough to govern themselves. We're fighting to prove that being old doesn't make you right. Captain Kim Jae-sung of the Courage raised his hand. Sir, what if we don't make it through the blaze? Then we make sure our sacrifice means something. We show the galaxy that someone was willing to try. Sometimes that's enough to inspire others to finish what we started. Captain Park Seung-min of the Resolve spoke up. And if we do make it through? Dongwu smiled grimly. Then we introduce the Eternal Council to a concept they've forgotten. Fair competition. The teams dispersed to their ships. Final systems checks were completed. Weapons were loaded. Hull modifications were tested one last time. In the Indomitable's observation deck, Dongwu stood with his senior staff, looking out at the 3 modified corvettes floating in formation nearby. Beyond them, the blaze waited, beautiful and terrible and supposedly impenetrable. Sir, Nari said quietly, are we really going to do this? Nari, we're about to attempt something that every military expert in the galaxy says is impossible. We're going to attack beings who are worshipped as living gods. We're going to penetrate a barrier that has stood for 50,000 years. He turned to face his team. Of course we're going to do this. We're humans. Impossible is just another word for interesting. The countdown began. 3 ships against 50 millennia of unchallenged power. 300 humans against the rulers of the galaxy. But for the first time in 50,000 years, the Eternal Council was about to learn what it felt like to be challenged by someone who refused to lose. The 3 Earth corvettes hung in space like tiny insects before a wall of cosmic fire. The Defiance, Courage, and Resolve had been modified beyond recognition. Their hulls gleamed with experimental heat-resistant coating that had never been tested in real combat. Extra armor plating covered every critical system. They looked more like flying shields than proper warships. Captain Lee Dongwu gripped the command chair of the Defiance as he stared at the blaze through the main view screen. Up close, the energy barrier was even more terrifying than their long-range scans had suggested. Streams of orange and gold fire twisted through space in patterns that seemed almost alive. The barrier stretched beyond visual range in every direction, an unbroken wall that had protected Pyraxis for 50,000 years. Captain, Private Park Jiho called from his station. I'm reading massive energy fluctuations ahead. The patterns Sergeant Kim identified are holding steady, but the window is smaller than we calculated. How much smaller? Maybe 3 minutes instead of 4. And the gap is narrower. Sergeant Kim Nori looked up from the weapons console. Sir, hull temperature is already rising just from being this close. The blaze is affecting us from 2 light minutes away. Dr. Choi Sunja monitored the energy readings on her scientific instruments. Captain, the blaze isn't just a defensive barrier. It's actually feeding energy back into Paraxis. The whole system is designed to make the planet stronger while keeping enemies out. Clever, Dongwu admitted. But every system has limits. The communication array activated and Captain Kim Jae-sung's voice came through from the Courage. Defiance, this is Courage. Our modifications are holding but barely. How long until the window opens? Jiho checked his instruments. 18 minutes, sir. Captain Park Seung-min's voice joined the channel from the Resolve. All ships, I'm detecting movement inside the blaze. Something big is coming toward us. The three human captains watched as shapes began to emerge from the wall of fire. They were ships, but unlike anything in Earth's databases. The vessels seemed to be made of the same crystalline material as High Regent Vorthak. They moved through the blaze like fish through water, completely unaffected by energies that would vaporize normal matter. Flame Guardians, Sunja whispered. The Council's elite warriors. They've never been defeated in combat. How many? Dongwu asked. Sensors are having trouble with the interference, but at least 30 vessels, maybe more. The lead Guardian ship was massive, easily 3 times the size of the Earth corvettes. Its hull pulsed with internal light and weapon ports were opening along its sides. Behind it, smaller fighters moved in perfect formation. A new voice filled the communication channel. It was different from Vorthak's, younger sounding but no less arrogant. Primitive creatures of Earth, I am War Commander Thalax of the Flame Guardians. You will retreat immediately or be destroyed. This is Captain Lee Dongwu. We're not retreating. Then you choose death. So be it. The Guardian ships opened fire. Beams of pure energy lanced out from the blaze, crossing the distance between the fleets in seconds. The human ships scattered, their pilots pushing the engines beyond safe limits. Evasive maneuvers, Dongwu ordered. Show them what human pilots can do. The Defiance rolled hard to starboard as an energy beam passed through the space where it had been moments before. The beam was so powerful that its passage left glowing particles in the vacuum. Nari worked frantically at her console. Captain, their weapons are incredible, but they're designed for fighting large, slow targets. They can't track our maneuvers. That's because we're not flying like anyone else they've fought, Dongwu replied, pulling the ship into a spiral that would have torn apart a larger vessel. We're flying like humans. The 3 Earth ships danced between the Guardian formations, too small and fast to be easily targeted. Their return fire seemed pitiful against the massive alien vessels, but they weren't trying to win a straight fight. They were buying time. Jiho, how long until the window? 8 minutes, sir. Captain Jae-sung's voice crackled over the comm. Defiance, the Courage is taking heavy fire. We've lost our port engine, but we're still mobile. Hang in there, Courage. Almost time. War Commander Thalax's voice boomed across all frequencies. Impressive evasion, humans. But you cannot run forever. You are gnats before the might of the eternal flame. Maybe, Dongwu replied as he dodged another energy beam. But gnats can be very annoying. The Resolve suddenly broke formation, accelerating directly toward the largest Guardian vessel. Captain Sungmin's voice came through the comm, calm and determined. All ships, this is Resolve. We're going to give them something to think about. Sungmin, what are you doing? What humans do best, sir. Something crazy. The Resolve fired everything it had as it closed with the Guardian command ship. Its weapons were nowhere near powerful enough to seriously damage the alien vessel, but they got its attention. The Guardian ship turned all its firepower on the approaching corvette. Resolve, get out of there, Dongwu ordered. Negative, sir. This is our play. The Resolve's hull began to glow red-hot under the Guardian's assault. Armor plating peeled away like flower petals. But the small ship kept coming, its pilot finding gaps in the enemy fire through pure skill and determination. At the last second, the Resolve changed course slightly and slammed into the Guardian's weapon array. The explosion was brilliant, taking out a significant portion of the alien ship's firepower. Resolve, report. Silence. Resolve, please respond. Static filled the channel. Captain Sungmin and his crew were gone, but their sacrifice had damaged the Guardian command vessel and thrown the enemy formation into confusion. Sir, Jiho called out, his voice tight with emotion. Window opening in Sector 7. We have maybe 2.5 minutes. All ships follow my lead. For the Resolve. For the Resolve, Captain Jae-sung replied from the damaged Courage. The 2 remaining Earth ships turned toward the opening in the blaze. The gap looked impossibly small, barely wide enough for their vessels. Energy cascaded around the opening like a waterfall of liquid lightning. Nari, how are our modifications holding? Hull temperature is climbing fast. The ablative coating is doing its job, but we won't last long once we're inside. We don't need long, just long enough. The Defiance and Courage dove toward the gap in the blaze. Behind them, the Guardian ships gave chase, but they seemed hesitant to approach the barrier's edge. Perhaps even they feared the full power of the cosmic fire. The moment the Earth ships entered the blaze, everything changed. The universe outside disappeared, replaced by walls of pure energy that pressed against their hulls like angry ocean waves. Alarms screamed as temperatures spiked beyond all safe levels. Hull integrity dropping fast, Nari reported, shouting over the noise. We're losing the outer armor. Engine temperature critical, Jiho added. If we don't get through soon, we'll lose power completely. Sunja, any readings on what's ahead? The energy is too intense for clear scans, but I think I see something. A shadow in the fire. It might be the other side. The Courage's signal was fading as its communication array was damaged by the intense energy. Captain Jae-sung's voice came through broken and distorted. Defiance, we're losing life support. Hull breach in Section 4. Stay with us, Courage. Trying, sir. But this is worse than anything we simulated. The blaze fought them every meter of the way. It was like flying through the heart of a star. The energy didn't just attack their ships. It seemed to attack reality itself. Space twisted around them in ways that made their instruments give impossible readings. Captain, Sunja called out. The energy patterns are changing. The blaze is trying to close the gap while we're still inside. Can we make it? Unknown. We're right at the edge of what our modifications can handle. The shadow Sunja had detected grew larger and more distinct. It was the other side of the barrier, the space around Paraxis that no uninvited guest had seen for 50 millennia. Almost there, Dongwu muttered, willing his ship forward through sheer determination. The Defiance burst out of the blaze like a cork from a bottle, its hull glowing white-hot but intact. Seconds later, the Courage emerged, trailing vapor from multiple hull breaches but still flying. We made it, Jiho whispered in amazement. Before them spread the impossible beauty of Paraxis. The planet was a work of art, covered in crystalline spires that reached into space. Floating cities connected by bridges of pure light orbited the world in perfect formation. It was the most beautiful sight any human had ever seen. It was also the most heavily defended. Captain, Nari said quietly, I'm reading weapon signatures everywhere. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. And we just became the first uninvited guests in 50,000 years, Dongwu replied. I don't think they're going to roll out the welcome mat. Across the communication channels, alien voices began shouting in languages the translation systems couldn't handle. Alarm signals echoed from every corner of the system. For the first time in 50 millennia, the home of the Eternal Council was under attack. Two small battered ships crewed by beings the Council considered primitive had achieved the impossible. They had breached the blaze. The real fight was about to begin. The space around Paraxis erupted into chaos as warning signals blared from every direction. Captain Lee Dongwu watched through the Defiance's cracked view screen as the most beautiful planet in the galaxy transformed into a fortress of war. Crystalline defense platforms that had been hidden behind the aurora of cosmic energy now revealed themselves, their surfaces bristling with weapons that had never been fired in anger. Captain, Sergeant Kim Nari called from her damaged console. I'm counting over 300 defensive positions. Power signatures are beyond anything in our database. The Courage limped alongside them, trailing atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. Captain Kim Jae-sung's voice crackled through the damaged communications array. Defiance, we've lost main engines and most of our weapons. We can maneuver on thrusters, but not much more. Understood, Courage. Stay close and follow our lead. Dr. Choi Sunja looked up from her science station, her face pale with amazement and terror. Captain, the defensive grid is activating systems that our sensors can't even classify. Some of these weapons appear to manipulate space itself. Private Park Jiho frantically worked at his communications console. Sir, I'm intercepting transmissions from the council chambers. They're using words our translation software can't handle. But the emotional content is clear. They're terrified. Good, Dongwu replied grimly. Terror makes people make mistakes. The first wave of Paraxis defenders launched from the floating spires around the planet. These weren't the flame guardians who had fought outside the blaze. These were something else entirely. The ships moved like living creatures, their hulls shifting and flowing as they flew. They seemed to be grown rather than built, and they radiated an aura of ancient menace. Eternal Fleet, Sunja whispered. The Council's personal guard. They've never lost a battle. Today might be their first, Nari said, checking what remained of their weapons. The lead enemy vessel was enormous, easily the size of a small moon. Its surface was covered in what looked like scales that shifted between different colors as it moved. Weapons emerged from hidden ports like the fangs of some cosmic predator. A voice boomed across all frequencies, speaking in perfect human languages. Invaders from the primitive world, you have committed the ultimate sacrilege. You have violated the sacred space of the Eternal Council. Prepare for oblivion. This is Captain Lee Dongwu of Earth. We're here to discuss your surrender. The silence that followed was so complete that Jiho checked if their communications had failed. When the alien voice returned, it carried a note of confusion that would have been funny under different circumstances. Surrender? You speak of our surrender? 2 damaged vessels against the entire Eternal Fleet? Well, Dongwu said, pulling his ship into an evasive pattern as energy beams began lighting up space around them. When you put it that way, it does seem unfair. You might want to call for backup. The alien fleet opened fire with weapons that rewrote the laws of physics. Beams of twisted space-time lanced toward the human ships. Energy that burned hotter than stars painted rainbow trails across the darkness. Missiles that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously sought their targets, but the Earth ships weren't there to receive them. Dongwu threw the Defiance into a series of maneuvers that no sane pilot would attempt. The ship twisted through space like a leaf in a hurricane, avoiding destruction by margins measured in meters. Behind him, Captain Jae-sung proved that a damaged ship could still dance, guiding the Courage through the enemy fire with skills that bordered on supernatural. They can't hit us, Nari observed with amazement. Their weapons are incredibly powerful, but they're designed for different kinds of targets. Bigger targets, Jiho added. Slower targets. Targets that fight like civilized people. Lucky for us, we're not civilized, Dongwu replied, rolling the ship under a beam that would have cut them in half. The human ships darted between the massive alien vessels like minnows among whales. Their return fire was pathetic by comparison, barely scratching the enemy's armor. But they weren't trying to win through firepower. They were trying to prove a point. Sir, Sunja called out, I'm detecting increasing confusion in their formations. They're not used to opponents who won't stand still and fight properly. Proper fighting is for proper soldiers, Dongwu said. We're pirates, remember? The Defiant suddenly dove toward the planet's surface, using Paraxis's gravity well to accelerate beyond the alien ship's ability to track. The massive enemy vessels tried to follow, but their size worked against them in the planet's gravity field. Courage, can you keep up? Barely, sir, but we're with you. The 2 human ships skimmed the upper atmosphere of Paraxis, flying between the floating spires that housed the planet's population. The crystalline towers were works of art, each one unique and beautiful beyond description. They had stood for 50,000 years without ever seeing war. Today that changed. The alien fleet followed them into the atmosphere, but the massive ships struggled to maneuver between their own cities. Warning signals echoed from the spires as civilians who had never known danger suddenly found themselves in the middle of a battle. Captain, Jiho said, I'm receiving thousands of transmissions from the planet. The population has never seen warfare. They don't know what to do. 50,000 years of peace will do that, Sunja observed. They've forgotten that security has a price. Dongwu guided his ship between 2 particularly tall spires, using them as cover from the pursuing fleet. Everyone's forgotten except us. We remember that freedom isn't free. The chase continued through the crystal forests of the upper atmosphere. The human ships used every trick they knew, turning the enemy's own cities against them. The massive alien vessels couldn't fire their main weapons without risking damage to their own infrastructure. They're holding back, Nari realized. They won't use full power near their own cities. Home field advantage, Dongwu agreed. Except we're using it against them. Suddenly, the Courage shuddered as a lucky shot from one of the smaller alien fighters found its mark. Captain Jae-sung's voice came through strained and painful. Defiance, we've lost navigation. Thrusters only. Jae-sung, get out of there. Negative, sir. We still have weapons. The Courage turned toward the largest enemy vessel, a ship so huge it blotted out stars. With only thruster power, the small human corvette began its final attack run. For Earth, Captain Jae-sung said simply. For Earth, Dongwu replied. The Courage accelerated toward the enemy flagship, firing everything it had left. The alien ship's defensive systems activated, filling space with deadly energy. But the human pilot held his course. At the last moment, just before impact, the Courage's remaining missiles found a weak point in the enemy's armor. The explosion was visible from orbit. The alien flagship, wounded but not destroyed, reeled away from the planet's surface. Behind it, the Courage was gone, taking another piece of human courage with it into legend. Sir? Jiho said quietly. We're alone now. Dongwu looked at his remaining crew. Nuri at weapons, her face set in grim determination. Jiho at communications, young but steady. Sunja at sciences, still taking readings even in the middle of battle. They were the last humans in the heart of enemy territory, facing impossible odds with a damaged ship and depleted weapons. Not alone, he said. We carry everyone with us. Everyone who ever refused to kneel to bullies. Everyone who ever said no when the world said yes. The alien fleet regrouped surrounding the lone human ship. Hundreds of vessels, each one more powerful than anything Earth had ever built. The voice of their commander filled the communication channels again. Brave fools from Earth, you have fought well. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Counteroffer, Dongwu replied. You surrender and we'll let you keep your dignity. The alien commander's laughter was like breaking glass. You amuse us, human, very well. We will end this game. But as the alien fleet moved in for the kill, something unexpected happened. Signals began arriving from across the galaxy. Other species, oppressed worlds that had watched the battle through hijacked communication networks, began broadcasting their own messages. This is the free colony of Nexus 7. We stand with Earth. Rebellion fleet from the Outer Rim. We're coming to help. Independent Worlds Coalition. Hold on, humans. Help is coming. Jiho looked up from his console with wonder in his eyes. Captain, they're responding to our fight. Dozens of resistance movements across the galaxy are declaring their independence from the Council. Sunja smiled through her tears. We did it. We showed them that the Council can be challenged. Not yet, Dongwu said, watching the enemy fleet close in. We've started something, but it's not finished. The Defiants turned toward the largest spire on Paraxis, the one that housed the council chambers where the galaxy's rulers had sat unchallenged for 50 millennia. If they were going to die, they would die making a statement that would echo across the stars. All crew, prepare for final approach. We're going to pay a personal visit to some very old bullies. The last human ship dove toward the heart of the Eternal Council's power, carrying with it the hopes of 1 billion oppressed souls and the promise that even legends could fall. The Council's great tower stretched toward the stars like a crystal needle, beautiful and terrible in its ancient majesty. Captain Li Dongwu guided the damaged Defiants through the floating platforms that surrounded the spire, dodging defensive fire that grew more desperate with each passing moment. Hull integrity at 15%, Sergeant Kim Nari reported. We're flying on luck and stubbornness at this point. Good thing we have plenty of both, Dongwu replied, threading the ship between two defensive platforms that tried to close their energy nets around them. Dr. Choi Sunja monitored the alien communications. Captain, the Council is in complete chaos. I'm hearing words that translate roughly to impossible, unprecedented, and what appears to be the alien equivalent of panic. Private Park Jiho looked up from his console. Sir, I've managed to tap into their internal security system. The council chambers are at the top of this spire, but there are multiple defensive layers between us and them. Then we go through them. The Defiants crashed through the tower's outer wall in a shower of crystal fragments and energy discharge. The ship's emergency systems screamed warnings as they found themselves flying through corridors that had never been designed for spacecraft. This is insane, Nari muttered, watching alien security forces scramble to respond to the unprecedented invasion. Insane is what we do best, Dongwu said, piloting the ship up a massive central shaft that seemed to extend forever into the tower's heights. The tower's internal defenses activated, filling the shaft with energy barriers and automated weapons. But these systems had been designed to stop normal intruders, not a damaged warship flown by someone who had already achieved 6 impossible things before breakfast. Sir, Jiho called out, I'm detecting massive energy signatures above us. The Council's personal guard is mobilizing. How many? All of them, sir. Every guardian, every automated system, every defensive measure they have. They're throwing everything at us. Sunja pulled up readings on her tablet. Captain, based on the energy patterns, we're dealing with technology that's been refined over 50 millennia. These defenses have never been breached. Today's a day for firsts, Dongwu said, rolling the ship to avoid a pulse of energy that would have torn them apart. The Defiants climbed through level after level of the impossible tower. Each floor was a wonder of alien architecture, filled with beings who had lived for thousands of years and ruled the galaxy without question. Now they pressed themselves against walls and stared in shock as the small human ship fought its way upward. "They've never seen anything like this," Sunja observed. "For 50,000 years, no one has challenged them in their own home. They don't know how to react." "Good," Nari said, firing at the automated defenses that tried to block their path. "Confusion makes them sloppy." The ship broke through another energy barrier and suddenly emerged into a vast chamber. The council's great hall spread before them, a crystalline dome where 12 ancient beings sat on thrones of living light. These were the Eternal Council, rulers of the galaxy, legends made flesh. High Regent Vorthak stood at the center, his forearms weaving patterns of energy that made space itself ripple. The other council members flanked him, their alien forms radiating power that had shaped civilizations. "Impossible," Vorthak's voice boomed through the chamber. "Nothing can breach our defenses. Nothing can reach this sacred place. You are not real. This cannot be happening." Dongwu brought the ship to a hover in the center of the dome. Through the cracked view screen, he stared directly at beings who had been worshipped as gods for longer than human civilization had existed. "We're real," he said into the ship's external speakers. "And your 50,000-year winning streak just ended." "You are primitives," another council member shrieked, its voice like breaking crystal. "Your species achieved spaceflight mere months ago. How can you stand before us?" "Practice," Nari said dryly. The council members began to glow with internal light, their forms becoming harder to look at directly. Energy crackled between their hands as they prepared to unleash power that could reshape matter itself. "Captain," Sunja said urgently, "they're drawing energy from the planet's core. Whatever they're about to do, it's going to be beyond anything we've seen." "Then we better stop them," Dongwu said. The ship's remaining weapons fired, sending streams of human-made destruction toward the ancient rulers. The energy beam struck a barrier around the council members, but instead of being absorbed, they caused the barrier to flicker and spark. "Their defenses are failing," Jiho said with amazement. "Our weapons shouldn't be able to affect them at all." "Maybe their power isn't as absolute as they thought," Sunja suggested. Vorthak's 6 eyes widened as he stared at the weapon impacts on his energy shield. "This is not possible. Our power is eternal. Our rule is absolute. We are beyond the reach of lesser beings." "You were," Dongwu said, bringing the ship closer to the council platform. "But you forgot something important during your 50,000 years of easy victories." "What could we possibly have forgotten?" "That power without challenge becomes weakness. That victory without struggle becomes failure. You've been so busy being legends that you forgot how to be fighters." The ship's boarding ramp lowered with a hiss of equalizing atmosphere. Dongwu, Nari, Jiho, and Sunja stepped out onto the crystalline floor of the chamber, their human boots clicking against alien stone. 4 humans in damaged military uniforms stood before 12 beings who commanded the loyalty of 1,000 worlds. The contrast was so absurd it might have been funny, except for the dead seriousness in the humans' eyes. "Surrender," Dongwu said simply. The silence that followed was deafening. Council members who had never heard the word no applied to them struggled to process what they were hearing. "Surrender," Vorthak repeated the word like he was trying to understand a foreign concept. "We are the Eternal Council. We do not surrender to anyone." "Then you'll fall to anyone," Nari said, her weapon trained on the ancient ruler. "This is impossible," another council member wailed. "We have ruled for 50 millennia. We have power beyond comprehension. We are eternal." "You were eternal," Sunja corrected. Past tense. "Today you learned that even eternity has an expiration date." Jiho activated his portable communication array. "Captain, I'm broadcasting this across the galactic network. Every species in known space is watching the Eternal Council, brought to their knees by 4 humans. Across the galaxy, 1 billion screens showed the impossible. The rulers of known space. Beings who had been worshipped as living gods cowering before creatures they had dismissed as primitive. The image burned itself into the collective consciousness of every oppressed world. "The galaxy is watching," Dongwu said to the council. "What happens next is up to you. You can adapt to a galaxy where everyone is equal, or you can become a cautionary tale about what happens to bullies when someone finally stands up to them." Vorthak fell to his knees, his crystalline form dimming as the reality of defeat settled over him. "This cannot be the end. We are legends." "Legends end," Dongwu said, extending his hand to the fallen regent. "But people endure." The question is whether you want to end as legends or begin as equals." The other council members looked at each other in confusion and dawning understanding. For 50,000 years, they had never considered that their authority might be questioned. Now they faced a choice that would determine the future of galactic civilization. Outside the tower, the sounds of celebration could be heard as news of the Council's defeat spread across Peraxis. For the first time in millennia, the citizens of the galaxy's capital were free to choose their own destiny. The age of legends was ending. The age of freedom was about to begin. 3 months had passed since the impossible day when humanity breached the blaze and brought down the Eternal Council. Admiral Lee Dongwu stood in the observation deck of Freedom Station, the newly built Joint Operations Center orbiting Peraxis. Through the transparent walls, he could see ships from dozens of species working, together as equals for the first time in galactic history. The station bustled with activity as beings who had been enemies or strangers just months before learned to cooperate. Reptilian engineers from the Outer Rim worked alongside crystalline mathematicians from the core worlds. Former slaves collaborated with their one-time masters to build a better future. "Hard to believe it's only been 3 months, Major Kimnari said, joining him at the observation window. Her promotion had come with the establishment of the new Galactic Cooperation Council. Humanity's reward for shattering 50 millennia of tyranny. "Time moves fast when you're making history," Dongwu replied, watching a convoy of supply ships arrive from Earth. Humanity had gone from unknown primitives to respected leaders of galactic civilization in less than a year. The station's communication system chimed with an incoming priority message. "Dr. Choi," Sunja's voice filled the observation deck. "Admiral, you'll want to see this. We're receiving formal applications for membership in the Cooperation Council." They made their way to the main communication center, where Sunja was processing data streams from across the galaxy. Her promotion to Director of Interspecies Relations had put her at the center of the galaxy's transformation. "How many applications?" Dongwu asked. "Over 400 species so far," Lieutenant Park Ji-ho reported from his expanded communication array, "including several we thought were extinct. Turns out they were just hiding from the old council." "Smart of them," Nari observed. "The council had a habit of destroying anything they considered a threat." Sunja pulled up a galactic map showing the applications streaming in from every corner of known space. "Admiral, we're also receiving reports of independence movements on over 1,000 worlds. Species that were forced into the Council's empire are declaring their freedom. Any violence? Surprisingly little. Most of the Council's enforcers surrendered when they learned what happened here. Apparently watching gods fall on live galactic television is bad for morale." A soft chime announced another arrival. Former High Regent Vorthak entered the communication center, his once imposing form now clothed in simple work robes rather than royal regalia. His rehabilitation had been voluntary but complete. The ancient ruler learning to see other species as equals rather than subjects. "Admiral Lee," Vorthak said, his voice carrying none of its former arrogance, "I have completed the territorial redistribution analysis you requested. Approximately 60% of the old council's territorial claims were based on intimidation rather than legitimate need. What about the other 40%? Genuine administrative necessity. Those regions still need governance, but under the new system of voluntary cooperation rather than forced subjugation." Dongwu nodded approvingly. The former region's cooperation had made the transition smoother than anyone had dared hope. "Thank you, Vorthak. Your help is making all the difference." The alien paused, studying the human who had ended his eternal empire. "I find myself curious, Admiral. Your species had every opportunity to simply replace our rule with your own. Why choose this path of shared governance?" "Because that's not who we are," Dongwu replied. "Humans didn't fight to become the new rulers. We fought to end the whole concept of absolute rule. Besides," Nari added with a smile, "the galaxy's too big for any one species to handle alone." "Even us," Ji-ho looked up from his console. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Andorian Collective. They're requesting permission to establish a trade embassy here." "The same Andorians who were enslaved by the Council for 3,000 years?" "The same ones, sir. They say they want to learn about this thing called free trade." Sunja laughed. 3 months ago, they'd never even heard the concept. Now they want to establish commercial relationships as equals. "Approved," Dongwu said. "Assign them docking Bay 12 and full diplomatic honors." The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Species that had known nothing but oppression for millennia were learning to make their own choices. Worlds that had been stripped of resources were rebuilding their economies. The galaxy was healing from 50,000 years of enforced stagnation. "Admiral," Jiho called out. "Priority message from Earth Command." Admiral Yoon Taemin's face appeared on the main screen, but he was no longer transmitting from Earth. Behind him, Dongwu could see the bustling activity of a space station under construction. "Admiral Lee," Yoon began, "I'm calling from Friendship Station in the Sol system. We've got representatives from 60 species requesting formal diplomatic relations with Earth. Any problems?" "Just the opposite. They're all eager to learn about human culture, human technology, human philosophy. Apparently the species that brought down the Eternal Council is considered quite fascinating." And Earth's response? The World Council voted unanimously to welcome all peaceful contact. "We're establishing a new Department of Galactic Affairs. They want you to head it when you're ready to come home." Dongwu looked around the communication center at his team. These people had followed him into the impossible and emerged as legends themselves. "I appreciate the offer, Admiral, but I think we're needed here for a while longer." "I understand. The galaxy's lucky to have you." The transmission ended, leaving the team alone with their accomplishments. Through the observation windows, they could see more ships arriving every hour. Each one carried beings who had never known freedom, coming to learn how to build a better galaxy. "Sir," Sunja said quietly, "I've been monitoring the old council territories. The transformation is accelerating. Worlds that haven't made their own decisions in millennia are forming governments, establishing trade relationships, creating art and literature that was forbidden under the old regime." "Any resistance?" "Some," Nari admitted. "There are always those who prefer the old ways, but they're vastly outnumbered by people who want freedom." Forthak spoke up. "Admiral, I have a confession. When you first challenged the council, I believed you were simply another primitive species destined for destruction. I could not comprehend how beings so young could threaten an empire so ancient. What changed your mind? You did not seek to destroy us for the sake of destruction. You sought to free the galaxy from oppression, including freeing us from our own corruption. That level of wisdom is rare in any species, regardless of age." Jiho pulled up a communication from the galactic news networks. "Admiral, they're calling today Heroes of Freedom Day. Apparently it's becoming a galaxy-wide holiday." "Heroes?" Dongwu shook his head. "We were just people who refused to accept that might makes right." "Maybe that's what makes someone a hero," Sunja suggested. "Being willing to stand up to bullies when everyone else has given up." Nari gestured toward the bustling activity outside. "Look at what we've accomplished. 3 months ago, this galaxy was ruled by fear. Today, it's governed by hope." "It's not perfect," Dongwu admitted. "It'll take generations to undo 50,000 years of oppression. There will be conflicts, mistakes, setbacks. But there will also be choices," Forthak said. "For the first time in millennia, every being in this galaxy can choose their own destiny. That is a gift beyond measure." The communication array activated with another incoming message. This time it was from a species none of them recognized, transmitting from the galaxy's far edge. "This is the Harmony Collective from the Spiral Arm Colonies," the message began. "We have been in hiding for 12,000 years, afraid to reveal ourselves to the Eternal Council. We wish to join the Galactic Cooperation Council and contribute to the new age of freedom." Jiho looked amazed. "Admiral, if they've been hiding for 12,000 years, there might be dozens of other hidden species out there. The galaxy just got a lot bigger and more interesting," Sunja observed. Dongwu activated the response system. "Harmony Collective. This is Admiral Lee Dongwu of the Galactic Cooperation Council. You are welcomed as friends and equals. Please proceed to Docking Bay 15. We have much to discuss and learn from each other." As the new arrivals approached the station, Dongwu reflected on the journey that had brought them here. 3 small ships against an empire that had ruled for 50 millennia, 4 humans against legends made flesh. It had seemed impossible then, and in many ways it still seemed impossible now, but they had done it. They had proven that courage and determination could overcome any obstacle, that freedom was stronger than fear, that even the mightiest empire could fall when someone finally had the courage to say no. "What now, Admiral?" Nari asked. Dongwu watched as more ships approached the station, each one carrying beings who had never known equality, coming to learn how to build a galaxy where everyone could live in dignity. Now we do the hard part, he said. We help them build something better than what came before. We make sure that what happened to the council never happens again. We protect the freedom we've won, and if someone tries to take it away? Dongwu smiled, remembering the moment when he had first looked at the impossible blaze and decided to fly through it anyway. Then we remind them that legends can fall.